Hello there, this is Jeff Erdman, E.D.S. Inc. Shandon, and we've got a little project that's going to require some machining today. You might recall that we were building a rack for the pin router, not a rack but a jig for the pin router that was going to be used for doing window cutouts on doors, and I never finished that. I've got some brackets that I have to make that are adjustable brackets that are within the outside bearing surface, and so we're going to be making those brackets today. So we'll be using the Bridgeport and drills and that sort of thing. So let me show you our plans and we'll go ahead and we'll get going on that project. So this is the drawing of what we're going to make. This is basically this section here would be the ball bearing surface that we made, the outside perimeter of our jig. And so this bracket fits over the top of that, and then a piece of 1/4 inch by 3 inch material will be fastened to that on this point to give the edge of the cutout both vertically and horizontally. So we need to make about 8 of these brackets, and then 4 of these brackets. These are the vertical brackets, and we only typically have cutouts from 2 sides from the vertical position. But the horizontal, we may have a vision light cutout, and we may have a louver cutout on a door. So we need more parts for the horizontal versus the vertical. So we're going to have 8 of these parts, and 4 of them are going to be a little bit wider from this point to this point, because I used 1 1/4 stock on the leading edge, and the other edge is only 1 inch. So we have to make this cutout here, which the part basically runs up, around, down, across this way, up and around this part and back. And right through here we'll have a set screw that applies pressure to this bracket and holds this in place so it doesn't move. So that's the drawing or drawing detail that we're going to use to develop this particular bracket. So what I'm using, I had a piece of 2 inch by 3.5 inch material. Now all I need is 1 3/8. So I took and I ripped this on my bandsaw. So it's really interesting. I used a piece of angle iron for a fence with this, and the angle iron wasn't quite on because I've got a discrepancy from one side to the other by about 8 thousandths of an inch. So that's not bad though. But the one thing about it, when I cut this with on the horizontal, not the horizontal, the vertical bandsaw, I used the power feed table, and from one end to the other, the dimensions are exactly the same from this side to this side. So on one end it's the same, and on the other side it's the same. It was just slightly out of square, and that was by about 8 thousandths of an inch. And that could be attributed to the angle iron that I used to use as a fence to rip this. So all in all, that bandsaw does a very, very nice, accurate cut when you go to rip something of this width and height, right on the numbers. So, but for my use, the number is so close that from one end to the next that it's not going to make any difference. So we're good. Now I've got this long enough so that I can do some of the basic features of both types of brackets, or actually all 3 of the different brackets, while it's all one piece. And then we'll have to cut off and make certain details of each one separately. So that's what we have going with this. Now that we've got the part cut, we'll probably take this and we'll just clean this surface off. This is the bandsaw cut surface. We'll just go ahead and we'll just kind of smooth that off so we have a nice surface to work with, and this will be the bottom of our part. Okay, I have my part in place on the Bridgeport, and what we're going to do is face this off. This is rough from cutting it on the bandsaw, so we wouldn't just put a halfway decent finish on it. That's all we're really after. We're not trying to dimension it really, just flatten it off, make it look halfway decent instead of this texture we get from the bandsaw cut. So we've got a cutter head on here. It has 3 cutters, and it's about 1.5 inches, 2 inch. It looks like a 2-inch cutter, and we're just going to take and face that off, run it down, put my clamps on the opposite side, and cut this side. Probably take 3 passes to get it all done. Plus we'll have to move it down because this is longer than my travel on my Bridgeport. So once I cut one side as far as I can go, then I'll have to reset it and finish it out, and then switch sides and cut this side. Now again, I'm not shooting for super accuracy here. We're just facing it off. The parts, you know, if I'm within 5 or 6 thousandths of an inch, even more than that for that matter, I'm really good. So I've got it clamped down now, and let's go ahead and we'll turn on our mister. Get that going. I've got the cutter head set at 600 RPM. And we'll feed it about 2 inches per foot. I mean 2 inches per... Tell you what, we'll move that up. We'll move that up to about 3. It looks like I'm not touching nothing here. I thought I had that set. So let's back that off. I'm going to take it down just to there we go. We're cutting clean across the face there, it looks like. Not quite. We must have started on the high side. We'll stop that again, get another bite. So we're hitting the corner, but we're not getting back here. So this is about, between these two sides, is 8 thousandths difference because of the fence I was using on the bandsaw. So we'll take it down just a little bit more. There we go. Let's try that now. Hopefully we'll still have enough to take some off this end. We'll find out. We may have to make another pass. Now we're going to have to go fast. We're not cutting all the way across. Take it down a little bit more. touch off. Zero that. Okay. Turn this off. And now we'll start our cut. I just want to go deep enough to get rid of this bandsaw cut. Looks like I got the width okay. Cutting all the way across. Looking good. Okay, I noticed that right in here we're missing, not quite cutting all the way across now, so we're going to have to take her down a little bit more. So in my tie downs of these, I put in little blocks of aluminum so I wouldn't scar the finish on this. And this really is a beautiful finish. I mean, it's just fabulous. Nice and smooth. You can't feel a transition between the two cuts that I made. Just really nice and smooth and beautiful pattern, machining pattern in that. In fact, that was going to be the bottom. Now it's going to be the top. It looks so nice. So it finished out very well with that cutter that I used. And from switching, because we had to move this down, so what I did is I pulled the head up, I backed this off, and then I lowered the head to within about 200 thousandths of where I needed to be, and I left my space a space about so far, and I think I showed that in the video. And then I get my machine running, and I go ahead and turn on my feed and feed it towards the direction that I'm going, slowly lowering it until I hit my 0 point, and then lock my column down. And you can't even see a transition mark from one to the other. It just turned out really nice. One feature that both parts have in common is this cutout. So that's why I left the stock long, because we're going to do this cutout for all the various pieces with one pass. Well, it's going to be more than one pass because this is slightly over an inch. So I'm going to use an inch tool to cut that. But that way we get that done at one time instead of setting up for two different parts. So I strapped that one long, is 38 inches, and that will accommodate every piece that I need. And we'll make that pass and that cutout for all the pieces. This is slightly different on each one of them. So one of them is cut out from the top and one of them is cut out from the bottom. So that is a little bit different, and we'll have to do those as separate pieces. And then again, one of them, 4 of the parts will be a little bit wider, but I can cut that section off and do that later, widen that out. So once we get done with the first initial pass. So that's my plan of attack on this. And one thing that I didn't show with this drawing is these corners are going to be relieved. They're both going to be radius. They won't be sharp. So we'll radius those corners, make them look nice. And I'll probably radius this one too, just so it's easier to use. And the other corners won't matter because they'll be all at the bottom. But this is a part where you might grasp it, so I'd rather have a softened edge on these corners here so that it's easier to use. Okay, so I've got my part set up for the slot that we're going to make in that, and I've got a 1-inch bit in there. Now unfortunately I couldn't find a 1-inch that wasn't molested already. This one is 2 of its tips are in bad repair, but the rest of it seems to be sharp, and I'm hoping that the other tips will make up, or will make up for the 2 that are chipped, and I'll be able to get through this since this is aluminum. So I'm going to try to take 1 pass is what I'm shooting for, all the way down to the full depth, which is 1 inch. So we'll see how that works. I may or may not be able to pull it off, but we'll give it a shot and see. So you noticed on my clamping, I've got clamps on both sides, on both ends, and this is because we're going to have more forces on this part than skimming the top of it like we did the last time. So we're going to go ahead and proceed here. I'll get everything cranked up and then I'll turn you back on and start the cut. And now we have to move this whole part down so that we can get the back side of this and cut it out. So I'll have to shift back. Once I move it, I'll have to shift back so that I'm cutting against this wall again. And then we'll cut this side over. I'm cutting over 0.112. Actually, it's 0.0112 over this side, just so we have enough to get over the 1-inch part and the attached. We're going to be putting a tape-on rule onto the part this fits over, and so each one of these sections, from the edge of it, will determine the position of the bracket for the particular cutout that we're doing. And that'll be measured by that rule that goes down to 1/16 of an inch. In woodwork, and especially vision kits, louvers, 1/16 of an inch is close enough. That tolerance is very acceptable. So we'll have a rule that goes down to the 1/16 of an inch on our vertical and horizontal members that these parts will attach to, and the edge of this part will determine where that cutout is. So these are kind of the sliding brackets that will determine where our cutouts are going to be within that jig that we're making. So let me go ahead and I'll reset up and we'll go for more. Okay, so we've readjusted our part here so that we can get the last section completed. Now this is going to be a little bit wider. When we complete this, we got about 12 inches that we have to make it a little bit over 1 1/4 inches wide. So our second pass back will be a little bit over 1/4 of an inch, but our first pass is 1 inch. Okay, what I have to do now is come back and cut 1/4 of an inch, a little bit over 1/4 of an inch off this. This way, 12 inches. I'm going to go 12 1/2, well, probably about 12 5/8 to make sure that I get my cut all the way for that full 12. Actually, you know what I should do is go a full inch over to make sure that I have enough material to cut into 3-inch parts. So that's what I'll do. I'll go 13 inches. I've set my DRO, and we can go ahead and do a return cut. Let's get things started again. So we've completed our 1 1/4 inch part, and we've got about 13 inches span. So we're doing pretty good there. Okay, our next setup here is we're going to do another detail or part for basically from here to here is one part, from here to here is another part, and from here to here is another. About every foot we have a different part or different component. So we have a different feature on the next part, and that feature is we have to go in 1 inch by 1/4 of an inch deep and make a pass down for about 12 inches. Again, we'll make it just a little bit over 12 inches for the part that we're going to be making. And then we'll have that part done. And then the last thing is we'll have the final part down here to do. I'm wondering if that's the best way to do it, but we're going to do it that way anyway. It'll probably cause us problems down the road, but we'll go ahead and do it. Okay, that's our zero, so we're going to zero our D or O out. Go in 1 inch. Okay, so that takes care of this second feature that we have. Now the other features are all on the other side. We probably, once we cut them into sections, we'll probably radius the edge of each one of these cuts so as it feeds in, it won't pull up the tape. I don't want a sharp edge grabbing the tape and then ripping it off. So we'll be cutting it across this way, and this edge will just slightly radius so that as it feeds in, it's right on the inside edges of this channel. As it feeds in, it won't pull up the tape. The tape is a measuring tape that will be adhered to the other piece of aluminum that this will ride on. Do her. Okay, one more feature that has to be done on the downside, so we'll go ahead and reset up this and do that feature, and the major features will be done. Then it'll be radius and corners and cutting and cleaning them up. So it turned out pretty nice. Very nice. Okay. That's what we cut out there. So that leaves a 3/8 shelf, and these brackets will be 3 inches wide. Whoops, I'm losing my view here. Hang on for a second. I'll get this back. These brackets will be 3 inches wide, and there'll be a 1/4 inch by 3 inch piece that'll sit on top of this, bolt to this, and extend horizontally or vertically, depending. Actually, these will extend horizontally. This section here, the part will be extending vertically. So I know that this doesn't make a whole lot of sense yet, but as we finish up, we'll see how this works out. But you can see the finish is very pretty, very nice milled finish. Even though I took this in 2 different depths, there's a little bit of variance there, but it's not worth complaining about. It's finishing out very pretty. So now we need to cut into the different components that we're going to make. So there'll be 4 components out of this piece, 4 components out of that, and so on down the line. And so we'll be able to make the different components that we need to accomplish our goal of making these brackets for the Vision Light kit jig. Okay, these are the 3 different shapes that we have. This one here is 1 inch on the inside. It's a 1 inch drop here, and this is 3/8 thickness here. This one here is for the verticals, and it's 1 inch across here, and this is just a 1/4 inch here. And then we have the part that fits on the lead vertical member, and it's 1 1/4 inch in width, and again from here to here it's 1 inch and 3/8 inch depth there. So what they're designed for, we had showed making these before. These are the basically the rollers that will roll on the pin router, and they'll make a big rectangle. This will be the outside perimeter, so this is the top. So this is a horizontal member. There'll be 2 vertical members and 2 horizontal members, and they'll be joined together and to form a rectangle. Now, these brackets, when they're done, will ride over the top of these, and there'll be members that run out. On this one, it'll be horizontally, and on this one, it'll be vertically, to form squares. And the door will be set on the main frame, and then we'll adjust squares for whatever opening we want to cut, and then the pin router will cut that square out by sliding the door around the center pin. So that's what we're doing here, and that's why we're making these brackets. So anyway, when we're complete, we'll show you that as well. And as I make each bracket and we finish the brackets, I'll show you how it's going to work all together. And we'll show you these things fully assembled as well as we put it together. Well, that's as far as we're going to go on this episode of making these pin router jig for our vision kits and louvers and cutouts for our doors. Next episode, we'll try to show the completion of the brackets that we started here, and we'll show how we're going to cut them into 3-inch pieces. We'll radius some of the features on this and clean them up, and then we'll show how we're going to use these as a jig, an adjustable jig for our pin router to make various openings. So anyway, that's this episode. We ask that you join us the next one. Thanks for watching E.D.S. Inc. Shandon, and until next time, have a nice weekend.